we'll hand it off to Ilya.
All right, but one of us is going to be responsible for recording this, right?
Yes. Yes. Well, it's pretty much just clicking a button and that's it.
Okay.
I actually already clicked the button.
Who clicked the button?
I did. It just came up, so I just clicked it. So.
Okay.
Oh, it's already started. Okay. So don't worry, we can edit this later. Okay. Well, I guess we'll start now. So first of all, thank you everybody for joining to another episode of Launch and Learn with Microverse. It's really great to have you all people here starting the year. It's a great way to start 2019. And before we start the presentation with Ilya, I just want to talk a little bit about Microverse. Luis and I were both students from Microverse. I just finished the course on December, and Luis is currently enrolled. And Microverse, it's an online program, I would say, where you don't have to pay anything until you get a job. We cover different topics like algorithms and data structures. We have Ruby and Rails. We have HTML and CSS, also React and Redux. So we cover all this wide range of topics. And then, like I said in the beginning, you don't have to pay anything until you get a job. All the course, Microverse hands the curriculum, and you're paired with another student, and you do all the tasks in a pair programming fashion, which is also a great skill to have. And I guess that covers pretty much the main idea behind the course. And yeah, I don't think I'm missing anything else. So, like I said, Luis and I will be moderating the talk. So if any of you guys have questions, there's a Q&A section where you can pose your questions, and Luis and I will go through the questions. So without further ado, I'd like to present Ilya. And Ilya, thank you very much for taking the time to be with us and being our first presenter of 2019. It means a lot to us. And thank you very much. And I'll hide my webcam and my microphone and hand it off to you.
Oh, thank you, Alvaro. Can everybody hear me just fine?
Yeah. Oh, well, last reminder, again, like I said, all the attendees, feel free to ask any questions. We don't have like a formal structure for this. Usually what we do is that we make the questions at the end of the presentation. Are you okay with that, Ilya?
Just fine.
Okay, perfect. So anytime you get a question, anytime people get a question, just post it on the Q&A, and Luis and I will go through them. And okay, now I'll go. Thank you.
Sounds good. Okay, I hope everybody has the slides, but I'm just gonna start. So I'm kind of just gonna talk about my journey as a developer, mainly as a web developer. So kind of, I started out. So first of all, I'm actually not. English is not my first language. I came from Russia when I was 8. I'm the oldest of 6 kids, and I've always been interested in tech. Part of what, like, my family just moving to America was kind of like a big thing, you know, like this new opportunities and amazing things, and that kind of got me interested in tech. And also my cousin's computers, so that was a big contributing factor. And currently I work at AppGeo, or Applied Geographics. I'm a lead product developer there. And that's kind of recent. Historically, we are a client work kind of company, and we do a lot of projects for local government, mainly in the United States, like the East Coast, and just pretty much around the United States. And we're located in Boston, Massachusetts. And I do remote work there. That has not always been the case. I used to commute in and my commute was about like almost 3 hours every day. So that wasn't very fun. But things have changed, and started doing some remote. So and I'm full-time remote now. I also do some open source, and that kind of started out as part of my job, just building web applications and things. You don't always want to build things from scratch. So there's a great open source community, and it's been getting bigger and bigger. So there's a lot of really cool things you can find, especially in the JavaScript community. It's really big, which is mainly what I do. I do JavaScript. And I maintain a few libraries on NPM, and I also use Ember.js, which is my preferred front-end framework. So I have a few Ember add-ons as well. And I do a few casual contributions, manage a few repositories on GitHub. So that's kind of like my my story, like where I am now, and really just starting out to build a products team at AppGeo. We just hired on a products manager a couple months back, and so we're kind of fleshing out what products mean for the company. And I'm like the main developer on our existing products now. So how it all began was more or less like a journey, and kind of what I mentioned, just loving all things technical. When I was around high school age, I didn't go to a traditional high school, which mainly for the reason that I loved the idea of robotics. It was kind of like futuristic, and so I wanted to do robotics, and so I decided to go to a tech school, which kind of does an alternating kind of schedule. So you do like academics, and then you would switch to shop, which would have different programs, and you can choose what you want to do. But at the time, the robotics program was kind of wavering, like the instructor had left, and so I decided not to do robotics just because I actually wanted to learn something. So I chose electronics instead, and from there I was kind of just so you have like academics, and then you have shop, and I loved shop and just learning, but at the same time, like there's always free time, there's always just like new things to explore. You're always using internet, and at the time, it's like the internet was mainly like static web pages, and so like it was a little simpler than it is now. And so we would do like little projects. We created these fake desktops back in shop, and we'd play pranks on like on the shop teacher or on students and stuff. So just like little things like that. And as I mentioned before, my cousins, my uncle and cousins had been in tech at that time, and they were doing computers. And primarily my cousin Vlad, he was actually transitioning from 3D work to web development, and he had created a little app called Chatterfox, which it's no longer live. This was back in 2003. And so this app was kind of an inspiration for me. It kind of showed me what you could do. And it was like this, it was way ahead of its time. That's why I think I discontinued. And it was like his first project, and I think he kept it around for a few years. But for me, it was like at that time it just clicked. It's like where I wanted to be. And so from there, I started doing experimentation, tutorials. I played with WordPress a little bit, did a little bit of freelancing kind of like in my spare time. And also fixing people's computers and stuff like that, because everybody thinks if you know tech, then you can fix their computer. and like W3 schools, like what was like the main thing. But now it's like MDN, and whenever you see W3 schools, it's like, oh, go away. So after tech school, I kind of decided to do a CS degree. I mean, it wasn't exactly my preferred path. I probably would not have went to college at the time, but it was probably a good thing that I did. And it did take me 2 tries to do that, and a few years. I mean, I started in 2005 and finished in 2012. So I took a break in between and did some manual work, which kind of showed me that I didn't want to do manual work the rest of my life. So I was like, okay, let me just finish college and I'll have a degree and I can show that I have finished something long, and that was kind of a journey for me, kind of learning about myself and teaching myself to kind of do that long work, so like starting something big and finishing it. And I mean, I didn't finish it in one go, but I did finish it, which thanks to my wife, she kept me accountable, which was good. You got to give credit to your loved ones. They're the ones that really pour into your life. And my wife has been great at doing that and being a help there. And from college, I got my first opportunity. I wouldn't say I learned that much in college for web development. It's kind of a tough thing. College is kind of an isolated environment where you're not really learning with somebody who's working in the industry that you're looking for right now. They're just teaching. So things like boot camps and Microverse are really cool. I wish I had that when I was just beginning. But I did get some small basics in. I don't know if I use any of them nowadays, but it was mostly just, so it's mainly just doing things and finishing things and doing little projects, learning about myself and learning about what it means to do tech work. And also learning what I don't like, I didn't like C++. That's not my thing. So it's also a good thing to know. So from there, I started my first job, and I was actually coding Java, and I was doing research and development for a kind of a big company here on the East Coast called Electric Boat. They were making submarines for the government, and so I was doing some kind of like search algorithm for submarines, kind of to know what part is touching what and what needs to be painted of a color. And so it's kind of bleeding edge, but it wasn't really what I wanted to do. It was interesting, and I learned some cool math on the job, but that wasn't really my thing. So I think I lasted about 8 months there, and then an opportunity came up. One of my friends had started a job at Applied Geographics, and he remembered that I did a little project for him in the experimentation phase. And he's like, oh, Ilya has done a little mapping mini application for me. Maybe I'll reach out to him, see if he wants to join AppGeo and do mapping apps for good, And so when I joined on, I didn't really know much, I never built a full app. And at that time, it was kind of not very clear what that meant either. Responsive design was just coming on board, and JavaScript was getting more popular. jQuery was used in most applications. I think AppGeo at the time was using .NET for the back end and jQuery for most of their apps. So it was, you could say spaghetti code. Some people say for jQuery apps, and it was, we were still betting on the web. Like AppGeo had at the time said no to Flash. They said no to Silverlight. They kept going with JavaScript, and that was a great bet. And we've been around for 25 years now, more than 25 years actually. And we work with a lot of the web community, just like web mapping libraries like that. And so at that time, I was learning on the job. I was just learning from my coworkers. I didn't really know what HTTP meant, like college kind of gave me like a very low level thing. They kind of taught about like UDP, TCP kind of stuff, but like, what does a post mean? What is the different error codes or content types, MIME types, all those things? Like that wasn't really focused on. So learning all those things as I was going from coworkers, and then also starting out in open source. So learning from a broader community, which was very important at the time. And so I didn't know everything, it was kind of one of those things to be humbled about, and say, okay, I need some help. Go out there and say, I'm not sure how to do this. Can you help out? But at the same time, also putting in some effort in, and that's always tough. It's because like it seems like it's free, open source is free. To just go out there and kind of ask somebody to help. But at the same time, nobody wants to help you if you're not putting in the effort. People want to see that you care about what you're doing, or that you are honoring their time. And so like that was a big thing to learn in the beginning, putting in effort into questions, first of all, into trying it yourself first instead of just going and asking like on Stack Overflow. So that was like the time when I started working with open source, especially since I didn't know everything, and I still don't. I mean, it's like that journey, and I think you can't know everything, but it's work with other people in the community, people at your work, and people at your work. There's only a handful of people, and everybody has certain skill sets, but not everybody knows everything. That's why going out, reaching out to other people online is such a helpful thing. And at that time, I started working on, I think we were doing broadband applications, so like internet access for different states, because the U.S. government had basically said, oh, each state has to provide where the internet is, and so every state had like some kind of funding, and so AppGeo was taking advantage of that and putting bids out for that. And I think my first application using Ember was for Connecticut broadband. And it was kind of just bleeding edge at the time. I think Ember was not even 1.0, taking a little risk. And I mean, it played out well, but learning on the job, learning as you're going along, you don't have to have it all together. I mean, I totally didn't. And so, and at the same time, making AppGeo a better place to work, a better place for clients to come and get projects done. So contributing and kind of improving methods. I think when I started there, we had cubicles and it was pretty isolated. Now it's more of an open environment, and remote work is a little more permissible for sure. Like we didn't have remote work back then at all. Now I'm 100% remote. So like it's one of those things. I probably wouldn't recommend starting remote for most beginners. Just be comfortable communicating with your coworkers and just knowing what the job entails, and be able to ask questions really easily. That's still difficult a little bit, even and at the moment we have a point of presence kind of machine at AppGeo, so I can actually connect anytime and see like this room of people there, which is nice. I don't know if everybody has that, so It's definitely one of those juggling things, and you kind of know when you're comfortable with remote work. So my journey into open source was kind of started with Ember pretty much, and kind of just contributing a little bit and like contributing in docs. I didn't really know much about JavaScript at the time because I just started out really. And so the most valuable thing I could do was contribute and like the readmes and like the documentation about like how things work, or like if something doesn't sound right, because when somebody's working on the framework, they're really close to it, and then somebody new comes along and they're like, oh wow, this makes no sense. And so if you can contribute that, like it's so small, it's not even a code, like that's important. And so like that's where I started. And now I can say I make Ember add-ons or just libraries on NPM. But it was a journey, you know. It wasn't like I could do it like that. It took some time. It took being in the community, being on Slack, being on I think it was actually IRC at the time, but just asking for help and having somebody review what I'm doing, and kind of being open about that. So like that was like the beginning of my open source work. But during this whole time, kind of learning from others, you know, learning from my coworkers, and it's really a humbling thing for sure, because like I didn't know any GIS at all. GIS is geographic information systems, and that's kind of what we do, like spatial work. So we combine GIS and the web, and kind of like my profession is kind of what's in between that, like where's the intersection. And I focus mainly on the front end, but I'm a full stack developer. But like initially I knew nothing about that. Like, I mean, I had done a little bit of Google Maps, but you know, it's kind of those things you pick up as you're working together. And so using open and reusing a lot of pieces, because the GIS is hard and I don't want to do all that math myself, you know. So and building apps is hard, so we use open source and contribute back. And so Ember was that starting point, and kind of it was like-minded for me, and it was also my first community. And the fact that Ember cared about ambitious applications but didn't want to reinvent things, you know, that was big for me, and that kind of jived with what I was wanting to do. I didn't want to write everything from scratch, you know. I wanted to just stand on the shoulder of giants, people before that have solved those problems. And I mean, the whole community was working together at that time to figure out what a single page application was. And so it was a great time. It was kind of like the beginning of everything. I mean, at that time there was Backbone, and Marionette, but like Ember was like the first big all-inclusive framework, and they really cared about the URL. And like for the web, the URL is like pretty much everything. That's like the biggest canonical kind of takeaway kind of. So you have the URL. If you have the URL, you can access anywhere. You can change what page you're on. You can link from page to page. That's what makes it so powerful. You can interlink different apps. And at that time, they were the only one that really cared, and they thought that was like the central thing that kind of built web apps. So that really stuck with me at that time, which was, I think, important, especially for GIS applications, because so like if you do any kind of filtering on a web app application, you kind of want to be able to share that. So the URL is how you do that. So you can have little filters and stuff that show up in the URL. So like that was it was just like important for the work we were doing. The kind of applications we were making were not exactly on the happy path, or kind of like the traditional single page application, because we had a map in our applications mainly, and a lot of them had the map as a central focus. And so the map would be in almost every page, or like, yeah, every URL would have like a map in it. And so kind of managing that global kind of state, not really global, but application state that was with the map was kind of tricky at first, and there weren't many people doing that. So it's kind of pioneering that, and kind of just figuring that out on our own was kind of the journey that we were on when Ember first came out. But now it's been, I think, 5 years that Ember has been around. And I think it's a lot more healthy now. It's growing for sure. And I mean, if you haven't tried it, I would give it a chance again. There's actually a big change coming soon called Ember Editions, which is basically because Ember has a LTS release. So basically long-term support, kind of like Node has, or Ubuntu has. And so every major release doesn't have breaking change. They don't really introduce new features necessarily, but they remove deprecated features. So editions is kind of a way to say, oh, the programming model has changed. And so Ember is coming out with this new edition called Ember Octane, probably around March. And that would be a great time for you to dive in and check things out. I mean, you can dive in now too as well. But it's really an ambitious framework that takes compiling JavaScript really seriously. So I would have a look at that if you haven't. I know React is very popular nowadays, and most people are using React, but I would say that for me, if starting out with React when I was a new person would not have been very fun. There's just so many options. What library works with what? Which ones do you pick? And so I'm kind of like blessed to have started with Ember. And I mean, I do some React work too now, just because some clients want React, or the application is really small, maybe like that needs to be really lightweight, and we use React. But if you want like a bigger application, like a dashboard, or even small applications, Ember is really good because it has all these conventions. And so, I mean, just just learning from that, and being part of the community has been really helpful. Just growing together, and I mean, like contributing, not just for the sake of getting something back, but just contributing to make things better for everyone. Was like a pretty big thing. And so I guess my takeaways from all of that are I should stick around. That's kind of been my story. I mean, I worked my first programming job for 8 months and then I jumped to AppGeo because it was something I wanted to do. This is like the web. They were focused on the web, and they were building web apps. And so for a while, and for me, I've kind of noticed that so if you aren't with people for a long time, then it's kind of hard to grow in those areas. Like things that are more important, like there's communication, compassion for individuals, responsibility, things like that. I mean, good code is secondary. And that's kind of what I've learned over the years. And as you're working, you're not defined. Like I'm not defined by what I do, because you bring in who you are to your job and use it. I mean, and for me, like learning to use that as an opportunity to change things for the better instead of just seeing code as like the end, but it's just people's lives better. Like I hope that you are, and for me, that's always been the goal, to make things easier for other people, make and not difficult, no dark patterns, not causing like addiction through what I'm building. Like just something that's for the good, and at the same time being able to let that go and say, oh, I'm done coding now. Can I like be with my family, or can I go outside and go hiking? It's not all about the code. So just get out there and just do what you need to do, but at the same time, take a break and do other things. And it's really important, especially get a good amount of sleep for sure. And just the last thing is just I can't stay in my comfort zone. For me, this is hard. I don't really do a lot of presentations. This is really my first big one, and that's difficult. Like push yourself. Things like the saying that pressure creates diamonds. That you need to go out of that comfort zone to learn more, to be a better person, to grow. Especially in things like communication, compassion, responsibility, beyond code. Even code though, like try something new. But don't just jump around, like stick around, invest in a community, learn together, and just help out other people. And just simple things, just like sitting in chat, just learning there together. I think that's huge. And that's one of the great things about the open source community. That's the great thing about just the internet in general, and that's kind of what draws me to that. And just doing things together and learning together, working together, making a better world for sure. And yeah, that's it. And you guys can check out my website, GitHub, and I started doing a little bit of YouTube stuff, so and also outside of my comfort zone. But if anybody has any questions.
Tell this was like one of your first presentations. You were so smooth, and thank you for sharing all your journey and all your stories. Luis is gonna jump in
here,
and he'll be able to go through the questions and ask them, and he'll shoot you the questions, and we do a little Q&A. Just waiting for Luis to join. In the meantime, I'll say sadly we won't be able to answer all the questions, but we'll do our best. I'm just waiting for Luis to jump right back in.
Yeah, so I'd just like to start with a couple of questions here.
Sure, go right ahead.
I actually didn't do Microverse bootcamp. Somebody asked that. I did do a little bit of college and self-taught as well. And my first job out of college was I was probably making about I think it was like 35 grand starting. And when I jumped to AppGeo, I probably made more than double that. And so that was a good transition for me. Let's see, what else is there? My first job without experience. College kind of helped with the resume. With the certificate, but I would say that college is probably not something you would need anymore, just because the internet vouches for you so much. So having a good portfolio online is a huge thing nowadays. And that speaks for itself beyond college.
How long was your portfolio? How do you have like a rule of thumb for the number of applications to build on your portfolio?
I would say something that you built from scratch, even one thing that you can kind of show that you put in love into it, would be more than most people have. Even at AppGeo, we do a lot of interviews, and a lot of people don't like things like simple things. Like they have a lot of little applications, but like they spent maybe like a few days on it, and like they didn't put any effort into it, And like you can see that. and then like having resumes that aren't filled out completely and not pay attention to details, things like that. I mean, those things, they matter, like communication and like doing that right.
So, Ilya, sorry to interrupt you, but I had some connection issues. That's why I didn't enjoy to ask you the questions. So, first of all, I would like to thank you to thank everyone that asked the question. And sorry if not all of your questions get answers, because we have a limited amount of questions that we can ask Ilya. So, Ilya, do you mind if I read some questions for you?
No, go ahead.
Okay, so the first one is from Serdar Sankaya, and sorry if I don't pronounce your name completely correctly, completely right. So just give me a free pass on this one. So what programming skill set and stack do you recommend to start learning in the beginning of 2019? And when do you think people should start applying for junior developer jobs?
So I would say focus on JavaScript. If you can get down basics, things like HTML, CSS, just DOM, like different JavaScript APIs, thinking in components. So like most front-end frameworks have component architectures nowadays. That's a huge thing. So like React, Ember, Angular, Polymer, even web components. I mean, they're still early, but just different things like that. I mean, I wouldn't say you have to have X library or X framework under your belt, but knowing that if being able to learn, that's like the greatest thing you could do, and showing that you can learn. And so I would start applying to jobs once you have some kind of little portfolio piece. Do you have a little application you built? I mean, is that out in the world? If you can show that, then I would start applying.
All right, so the next one is from Alvaro Sanchez, one of our hosts here. So what do you remember as one of your biggest struggles in your self-taught journey?
I would say that was the amount of content that was out. And at that time, 2003, 2002, 2004, there wasn't much, the web was still document focused. And so it was DHTML, kind of sprinkle stuff in. And so just finding good content out there and what to learn, look, what's important. Nobody really said that,
All right.
And kind of what drew me at the time was Rails. Rails was kind of like, I'm opinionated, and it's like, okay, this is what you should do to build a web app. And so like that was kind of a small thing that drew me in. But yeah.
So also from Alvaro, and when did you feel motivated? When did you feel you moved from being an apprentice to an actual dev?
I don't know if there's ever really a clear time for me, and I think that's for most people. It's kind of hard to judge where you are, but I think the biggest thing is knowing how to ask good questions, and I think for me, that was probably the transitioning point, and being able to say, is this necessary, or ask questions about features and say, X features, like clients comes in and they say, they want something specific, but they don't really know what they want. Like your job is to kind of bring them in and find like the right spot. And so kind of like that, knowing how to do that is like a big piece in being an actual dev, like that's I mean, you're always a real dev. I mean, don't take yourself like you're like less than everybody else. It's just that you might know like a little bit, but your knowledge grows, and we all have like, there's this huge amount of knowledge that we can't all take in,
Yeah. So the next one is from Ahmed Amin. He says, what is the most important topic we should focus on regarding data structure and algorithms?
I mean, just knowing basic things like linked lists is probably more than enough for most people. Algorithms nowadays, like you really don't need to implement them from scratch. Usually there's a library out there that just does it for you. But just like being familiar with like quick sort, binary search, and stuff like that. Those are like the basics. I mean, it really depends on what you're doing. You might be doing more math heavy stuff. So it's really depends on your field. I mean, on a day-to-day basis, I really do not use that many like well-known algorithms or data structures. I mean, like you use arrays a lot or hash tables, you could say, in JavaScript. But the one thing I would have you learn is more patterns. So like singleton pattern, or like just like when certain things make sense as a solution. So not so much algorithms and data structures, but patterns, design patterns, and code smells are things you should learn for sure.
All right. So the next question is from Camila Arena. So she says, I'm a newbie about coding. How can I have a better problem? How can I develop my problem solving skills?
So, I mean, ask questions, first of all. Pair programming is a great thing. That Microverse does that. That's a great thing. Also, read tests. So if you hop into a project, hopefully there's some tests, or if you go on open source, there are tests, and that usually helps you out with how things work, and so you can go backwards from there. The other thing is just keep learning. I mean, like it's just like one of those things, you kind of build it up as you go, as you do it, you just practice. And I mean, don't do it alone. Like there's a lot of tips out there. There's join a community, like I did with Ember, or I mean, there's plenty of communities out there. Hop on Stack Overflow, answer questions, ask questions, go back and forth. I mean, there's a lot of ways to do that.
All right, so the next one is from Oluwole Ilesamni. He asks, how do you stay focused?
For me, I mean, I try to, so we use like a task management, we use Asana at work. I try to assign myself a handful of tasks every day and try to complete as many of those as I can. And sometimes I use Pomodoro technique, where I do like 45 minutes of work and like 5 minutes of rest, and that kind of helps too. At the same time, also being able to say no, that's a huge thing. So like if somebody, like a project manager comes up and they're like, oh, can you do this? So you could say, not right now, you know, maybe I'll do that tomorrow. So that you're not focusing on too many things at one time. So you have one thing you're focusing on, and the rest of the time it's kind of, you're not really worrying about anything else, you know? So, I mean, like the whole multitasking thing is kind of not exactly true. So I wouldn't try to do too many things at once.
All right. So the next one is from FJ. So he says, hello, Ilya. Thank you so much. You're an awesome. Keep up the good work. He wants to know how long it will take to learn front end from beginner to intermediate or advanced, and yeah, basically that's it. how long?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on how much time you want to invest. But at the same time, if you, like I learned on the job, it's not, I mean, I wouldn't worry about it so much. It's not, if you can learn and you can show somebody that you can learn and that you've put in some effort, that journey it will just be an overtime thing, and you will grow as you build little projects. As you do every project, you'll learn more, and you can take that knowledge from your previous projects and apply it to new projects. And I mean, for me, it took to be more confident with myself, probably about like a year and a half, 2 years after starting to do web applications. I could say that I could estimate some time at that point a little more better, and just being able to say, okay, like that's not going to work, or like that's easy, or that's hard. I mean, those are the things you kind of want to gauge yourself on. Like, can you make those decisions? Can you see that? And like, I mean, I would focus on that. The code part comes along. I mean, the code is secondary.
And I personally want to thank you for that answer, because in this ready-made culture of ours, They say that you can become a developer like in 2 weeks. Just learn a little bit of HTML, CSS, JavaScript, build some things, and you're ready to go. And I mean, it's not like that. So thank you for this honest answer.
Not at all.
So the next one comes from Felipe Vergara. So can you share a specifically challenging moment in your career and how you managed to overcome it?
So for me, I mean, I had become attached to one of the products that I was working on, and just somebody, a project manager, coming in and saying, it should be this way. I think that was a challenging thing for me at the time, just because it was kind of like my baby, and I was like the one putting all the love into it, and then somebody comes in and they're kind of an outsider, you know? And so being able to humble myself and kind of say, okay, I will let you have this, you know, you can have this. I'll implement it, even though I don't agree with it. And I mean, and like, that's kind of, that kind of like, I think it happens to all of us, especially like if it's something I've been working on, it's kind of a passion. And I think that was probably one of the hardest things to learn in the beginning. And I think nowadays, I still love what I'm doing, but I don't tie it to myself so dearly, you know, like it doesn't define me what I'm doing. So I won't be as upset when somebody says, oh, can we do it this way instead? And like there might be like a supervisor or something.
All right, so let's see. Next one is kind of the same. Yeah, another user is asking, in your opinion, how far away are we from AI-powered self-programming software?
So I actually have a little bit. I mean, so my cousin Vlad, I mentioned earlier, he actually went ahead. He was working for Intuit, and he went ahead and built a software as a service or platform as a service that called Webflow. If you've heard of it, webflow.com. It's basically building web apps through UI. So, I mean, I think that we're getting closer to that, but I mean, it's definitely going to be like probably like 50, 60 years at least to anything AI that's like makes anything useful. But building things from a UI is definitely closer. And like, I mean,
yeah. So the next one is, how old are you? It comes from Arturo Torres.
I'm actually 31. I'll be 32 in April.
Okay. So Yesid Kano is asking if you could provide some insight on how you were able to get your first job without experience.
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned this earlier, but basically because I had a college degree at that time, but I mean, I also had some portfolio pieces that I did during college. I think those kind of contributed to my getting hired. I mean, it was a pretty low level kind of job. It was a company that kind of lent out developers in a way. And so that it made it a little easier, and they paid less than most developer positions at the time. And that was fine. I mean, I'm just getting in the door, you know. And I mean, the same thing with Microverse, like building your portfolio, working with other people, like those are things you want to kind of focus on.
All right, so I think it's quite similar, but maybe if you have something else to add to this question, it comes from Saul Bencas. What would you recommend to other beginners? Thanks a lot, by the way. You're great.
Yeah. So I would say, don't try to follow like every little guide out there. I mean, just pick something that you want to do and focus on that. Don't try to learn everything. Be focused. So like I focus on front end mostly. I'm a full stack developer, but I mostly work on front end. And I work with Ember. And so I'm not trying to be a great Angular developer, you know. I'm not trying to be a great Polymer developer. I'm trying to be focused in Ember, and maybe you want to be focused in React. That's great. but be focused. Maybe pick front end or back end. I know some people say T-shape is good, so like knowing a little bit of back end and more front end, or more back end, a little bit of front end. And that's good too. But I mean, I would just be focused pretty much.
Yeah. So we're getting some also interesting questions here. So Felipe Vergara is also asking when you need to characteristics that you're looking for.
So I mean, the things that usually filter people out is that they don't have the resume filled out, or they don't have any substantial projects that they've worked on. Like they don't look very like this account that doesn't really show very well, or they have things on the resume that just don't make sense for the job. They didn't really read the resume, they didn't fill it out really well. And then the next thing is, do they fit with the company? That's kind of like what you should be looking for. If you're looking for a job, don't just apply anywhere. Look for companies that you kind of resonate with. Learn about them. Learn like what they're about, and does that fit with you? Like, are you about that? Do you care about like what they're doing? And so apply there. Don't just apply anywhere.
All right, I think that was the last question. Thank you very much for all your sincere answers. And I say that, and I think I'm saying that representing all the students that are here today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody.
And Ilya, thank you very much for being with us. Thank you very much to all the people who tune in for the
Arturo
conference.
said, what's my favorite ID? I would say
go right ahead.
VS Code.
All right. So thank you very much to all the people who tune in. We do these webinars every couple of weeks, so keep in tune to catch the newest webinars. Again, Ilya, thank you for being with us. If you want to share any kind of web page or contact information on the chat, feel free to. And to all the people, if you have questions regarding Microverse, please feel free to write at support@microverse.com. I'll put the direction in the chat. Thank you very much to everyone. Bye.
Yeah, I'm gonna put my slides in here. There you go. Here are my slides, and my contact stuff is in here. Take care, everybody.